See, it's all pretty simple, I said, patting one of the large blue plastic barrels. The rainwater flows down from the gutters, through this filter here and into the barrels. Then, when I need to water the garden, I just attach a hose and voila! Free eco-friendly water. I, David, was proudly demonstrating my new rainwater collection system to Mrs. Gable, a curious and generally supportive neighbor. Saves money on the water bill, too. Mrs. Gable nodded, peering into one of the barrels. That's ingenious, David, and very responsible. I try, I said with a modest shrug. I'm a practical guy. I enjoy the feeling of self-sufficiency, and I'm a firm believer in conservation. Plus, my tomatoes loved rainwater. It was a win-win. And then I saw him. He approached with the grim determination of a tax auditor, clipboard clutched to his chest, his face set in a permanent scowl. He was the HOA representative, and I knew instantly that my moment of rainwater harvesting pride was about to be thoroughly drenched. We live in Dry Creek Estates, an ironic name. Mr. Miller? He asked, his voice as dry as the name of our neighborhood. That's me, I said, sighing inwardly. Something I can help you with? I'm Mr. Drysdale, from the Dry Creek Estates Homeowners Association, he announced, as if I hadn't already guessed. We've received a complaint regarding your rainwater collection system. My rainwater collection system, I repeated, feigning surprise. What about it? I knew exactly what about it. My rainwater collection system was, admittedly, not the most aesthetically pleasing thing in the world. It consisted of 3 large blue plastic barrels connected to my downspouts with a series of pipes and filters. It was functional, it was efficient, and it was a bit clunky. But it was in my backyard, mostly hidden from view, and it was saving me money and conserving water. It's unsightly, Mr. Miller, Mr. Drysdale said, his eyes fixed on the barrels with an expression of undisguised loathing. It's unapproved. It detracts from the community's aesthetic standards. Unapproved? I asked, raising an eyebrow. It's a rain barrel, Mr. Drysdale. I'm collecting rainwater. It's not like I'm building a nuclear reactor back here. The HOA, Mr. Drysdale continued, ignoring my comment, has strict guidelines regarding exterior modifications, and these barrels are in clear violation. He made it sound like I was harboring fugitives, not rainwater. He went on to claim that I needed prior approval, that they're an eyesore, etc. But there isn't a rule against them, I say. Mr. Miller, Mr. Drysdale said, his voice dripping with condescension, we strive to maintain a certain aesthetic in Dry Creek Estates, and frankly, your barrels don't fit that aesthetic. So, what you're saying, I said, my voice laced with sarcasm, is that saving water and being environmentally conscious is unaesthetic? Mr. Drysdale just stared at me, his expression unchanging. He clearly didn't appreciate my sense of humor. He handed me an official violation notice, informed me that I had 14 days to remedy the situation, or face a fine, and retreated, looking like he needed a stiff drink and a long lie down in a very, very dry room. The HOA meeting was, predictably, a soul-sucking experience. It was held in the Dry Creek Estates Community Center, a room that seemed to have been designed to be as bland and uninspiring as possible. Beige walls, beige carpet, beige everything. The board members sat at a long table, looking like a collection of disapproving statues. And presiding over them all was Priscilla. Priscilla Parched, the president of the Dry Creek Estates HOA, and the undisputed queen of all things water wasting and control freak. She was an older woman, immaculately dressed in a beige, of course, pantsuit, her hair perfectly coiffed, her expression a permanent mask of disapproval. She radiated an air of entitlement, and a complete disregard for anything remotely resembling environmental awareness. Her lawn, I knew, was the greenest in the neighborhood, thanks to a complex, and probably HOA violating, if anyone but her had done it, irrigation system that ran constantly, even during the hottest, driest days of summer. She was, in short, my nemesis. "Mr. Miller," Priscilla began, her voice sharp and accusatory, "your rainwater collection system has been brought to our attention." She said rainwater collection system, as if it were some kind of dangerous, possibly illegal contraption. "My rainwater collection system, Miss Parched," I corrected, trying to keep my voice calm and reasonable, "is a simple, eco-friendly way to conserve water and reduce my environmental impact. It's also, I might add, beneficial for my garden." "It's an eyesore, Mr. Miller," Priscilla declared, her voice rising in pitch. "It's unsanitary, it's breeding mosquitoes, and it's setting a bad precedent." "A bad precedent?" I repeated, incredulous. "By collecting rainwater? Something people have been doing for centuries?" "It's stealing water, Mr. Miller," she insisted. "Water that rightfully belongs to the community." "It's rain, Priscilla," I said, my patience wearing thin. "It falls from the sky. It's not like I'm siphoning it from your prize-winning petunias." It's unneighborly," she continued, ignoring my comment. "It's unharmonious. It's a blatant disregard for the aesthetic standards of Dry Creek Estates." I pointed out that the bylaws said nothing about rainwater collection. I explained again the environmental benefits of rainwater harvesting. I pointed out that my system was well maintained, that it posed no health risks, and that it was located in my backyard, not on public display. I even offered to paint the barrels beige to make them more aesthetically pleasing to the HOA's discerning eye. The other board members, a collection of mostly middle-aged men and women who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else, shifted uncomfortably in their seats. A few of them, I noticed, were actually frowning at Priscilla's increasingly unhinged rant. Perhaps they were secret conservationists, yearning to break free from the HOA's water-wasting tyranny. But Priscilla? She was unmoved. She was a woman on a mission to eradicate all traces of environmental responsibility from Dry Creek Estates. "The rainwater collection system," she declared, slamming her gavel down with unnecessary force, "must be removed. You have 1 week, Mr. Miller, and you are hereby fined $300 for violating the aesthetic harmony of Dry Creek Estates." Aesthetic harmony? It was rain barrels. I walked out of that meeting, my blood boiling, my sense of injustice reaching critical levels. Priscilla Parched had declared war on my rainwater, and I, David Miller, was not about to surrender. It was time to fight back. But not with words, with water. 1 week. That's all the time Priscilla Parched, in her infinite, water-wasting wisdom, had given me to dismantle my rainwater collection system, to remove my perfectly functional, environmentally friendly barrels, to deprive my garden of its precious, naturally sourced water, all because they were deemed unsightly by the self-proclaimed guardians of Dry Creek Estates aesthetics. 1 week to surrender to the forces of HOA-enforced drought. 1 week to absolutely, positively not comply. I, David Miller, was not a remover of rain barrels. I was a collector of rainwater, a champion of water conservation, a believer in the power of nature and the absurdity of HOAs. And I was not about to let Priscilla and her band of beige-loving bureaucrats dictate how I used the water that fell, freely, from the sky onto my property. It wasn't just about the rain barrels anymore. It was about principle. It was about sustainability. It was about the right to collect rainwater without being harassed by a power-hungry HOA president. My initial reaction was, admittedly, despair. I felt defeated. I felt like there was no hope but to comply. My internal monologue was a delightful mix of outrage, determination, and a growing fascination with an increasingly wild idea. "They want to take away my rainwater?" I muttered to myself, pacing my living room. "Fine, let them try, but they're going to have to deal with the consequences." I needed a plan, a strategy, a way to fight back, to defend my water-conserving rights, to make Priscilla Partridge's perfectly coiffed hair stand on end. I learned that the HOA was already working on an amendment specifically banning any kind of rainwater collection. And to do that, I needed information. My weapon of choice, as always, was research. I delved into the murky depths of the HOA bylaws, local ordinances, and, most importantly, water features. Because somewhere in the midst of my righteous indignation, a seed of an idea had been planted, a crazy idea, a glorious idea, a waterfall-sized idea. I meticulously examined the HOA bylaws, searching for any clause, any ambiguity, any weakness I could exploit. I focused on the sections about exterior modifications, landscaping, and water usage. I read and reread every sentence, every footnote, every mind-numbingly boring paragraph. And then I found it. It wasn't a direct loophole, not exactly, but it was an opening, a glimmer of hope, a way to turn the tables on Priscilla and her water-wasting cronies. The bylaws, in their infinite wisdom, had meticulously regulated unsightly exterior modifications and water storage containers, clearly targeting my rain barrels. But, and this was the crucial part, they said nothing, not a single word, about water features. As long as they complied with basic safety and drainage regulations, water features, fountains, ponds, waterfalls were apparently permitted. There was, of course, the usual vague clause about enhancing the property's natural beauty and maintaining the aesthetic harmony of the community. But that was subjective, open to interpretation, and, I suspected, easily defensible, especially if the water feature in question was spectacular. "Water features," I muttered, a slow smile spreading across my face. "Oh, I'll give them a water feature. I'll give them a water feature they'll never forget." The seed of an idea, that crazy, glorious, waterfall-sized idea, was starting to sprout. Operation Waterfall Whimsy was born. My plan was simple in its audacity. I wouldn't just keep my rainwater collection system, I'd transform it. I'd turn it into something so grand, so unexpected, so utterly un-HOA approved that it would make Priscilla Partridge's head spin. I would build a waterfall, a massive, multi-tiered, naturally landscaped waterfall, right there, in my backyard. It wouldn't be just any waterfall, of course. It would be a statement, a testament to my love of water conservation, a monument to my defiance of the HOA, and a giant, cascading middle finger to Priscilla's obsession with bland uniformity. The existing rain barrels wouldn't be removed. They'd be integrated into the design, disguised as part of the natural landscape, feeding the waterfall with a constant supply of free, eco-friendly rainwater. I'd create multiple levels and tiers, using natural-looking rocks and boulders. I'd build a large, beautiful pond at the base of the waterfall, stocked with HOA-approved, of course, aquatic plants, and maybe even a few goldfish. I'd install a pump system to circulate the water, creating a continuous, soothing flow. And I'd argue, with a perfectly straight face, that it was a water feature, not a water storage container, and that it was enhancing the property's natural beauty, with a heavy dose of irony, of course. It would be beautiful. It would be dramatic. It would be the exact opposite of everything Priscilla Partridge stood for. I could already picture her reaction, the sputtering outrage, the vein throbbing in her forehead, the inevitable meltdown. It was a beautiful image. I knew it was ridiculous. I knew it was probably going to be expensive, but I didn't care. This wasn't just about rain barrels anymore. It was about freedom. It was about the right to conserve water, to create beauty, to build a giant, cascading waterfall in your own backyard without the constant interference of a power-hungry HOA busybody. My first step was finding someone to help me bring my vision to life. I needed a landscape architect, a water feature specialist, someone who wouldn't look at me like I'd completely lost my mind when I explained my plan. I found him online. His name was Alex, another familiar name in my HOA battles, it seemed, and his company, Aquascapes, specialized in creating unique and breathtaking water features for discerning homeowners. "So, let me get this straight," Alex said, looking over my rather hastily drawn sketches of the proposed waterfall. "You want a waterfall? In your backyard? A big one? Because your HOA doesn't like your rain barrels?" "Exactly," I said, nodding enthusiastically. "Think Niagara Falls meets suburban backyard oasis. Think natural beauty meets HOA defiance. Think the most epic water feature in Dry Creek Estates." Alex stared at me for a moment, then burst out laughing. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," I said. "I have a situation with my HOA president, and this is my response." I briefly recounted the saga of the rain barrels, the fine Priscilla Parched's obsession with aesthetic harmony, and my burning desire for a little bit of watery revenge. "Mr. Miller," Alex said, wiping a tear from his eye, "you are my kind of client. I'm in. This is going to be amazing, but are you sure about this?" It's a bit much." "Much is exactly what I'm going for," I said. "I want it to be unforgettable. I want it to be unmistakable. I want it to be the most glorious, ridiculous, HOA-defying waterfall the world has ever seen." He was also a big advocate for water conservation. And so construction began. Trucks arrived, carrying tons of rocks, boulders, and landscaping materials. A backhoe dug out the area for the pond, transforming my formerly ordinary backyard into a construction zone of epic proportions. Workers swarmed over the property, building the multiple levels and tiers of the waterfall, carefully arranging the rocks to create a natural, cascading effect. The existing rain barrels were cleverly integrated into the design, hidden behind a screen of rocks and plants, becoming the secret source of the waterfall's flow. A powerful pump system was installed, ensuring a constant, dramatic cascade of water. The neighbors, as expected, were fascinated. They gathered on their lawns, watching the construction with a mixture of shock, amusement, disbelief, and the inevitable question, "What on earth is that man doing?" I, of course, played the part of the eccentric homeowner perfectly. I'd stroll around my yard, wearing a hard hat for dramatic effect, and offering vague, yet enthusiastic, explanations. "It's a water feature," I'd say, with a perfectly straight face. "A natural oasis. A tribute to the power and beauty of water." My internal monologue was a constant stream of triumphant pronouncements and giddy anticipation. "Take that, Priscilla Parched," I'd mutter to myself as another boulder was hoisted into place. "Enjoy your aesthetic harmony now." I imagined her face, contorted with rage, her perfectly watered lawn suddenly looking very, very inadequate. It was a beautiful thought. There was, of course, a brief visit from an HOA representative. Not Priscilla, thankfully. She was probably still recovering from the shock of seeing the construction trucks arrive. "Mr. Miller?" he said, looking nervously at the rapidly growing waterfall, his voice a mixture of confusion and apprehension. "We've received some concerns about this project." "Concerns? I repeated, feigning innocence. What kind of concerns? Well, he said, stammering slightly, it's rather large and unusual. It's a water feature, I corrected, with a perfectly straight face. And as you can see, I added, pulling out a copy of my building permits and the relevant HOA bylaws, both of which I now carried with me at all times. It's perfectly compliant, all permits approved, all regulations followed, no unsightly exterior modifications here, just natural beauty. He looked at the documents, then at the waterfall, then back at me. He clearly had no idea what to do. He mumbled something about reviewing the situation, and retreated, looking utterly defeated. I, David Miller, had once again outmaneuvered the HOA, and my waterfall, my monument to water conservation and HOA defiance, was nearing completion. The anticipation was almost unbearable. The neighborhood was buzzing, and I, for one, couldn't wait to see the final result. And even more importantly, I couldn't wait to see Priscilla's reaction. The completion of the Parched Paradise, as I'd christened my backyard waterfall extravaganza, was a moment of pure, unadulterated triumph. It stood there, cascading down multiple levels of faux rock, a testament to my love of rainwater, my defiance of the HOA, and my, perhaps slightly unhinged, commitment to a good prank. It was breathtaking. It was ridiculous. It was everything I'd hoped for. And, as expected, Priscilla Parched arrived within the hour. She didn't even bother with the pretense of knocking. She just stormed onto my property, which technically was now a semi-public water feature, her face a mask of outrage, her perfectly pressed pantsuit practically crackling with indignation. "What?" she bellowed, her voice echoing through the previously peaceful neighborhood. "Have you done?" I emerged from behind a particularly dramatic cascade of water, a picture of calm serenity, wearing a Hawaiian shirt and holding a non-alcoholic tropical drink with a little umbrella in it. "Good afternoon, Priscilla," I said, my voice smooth and even. "You're admiring my water feature, I presume?" "Water feature?" she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at the cascading spectacle. This is outrageous! You've turned your backyard into a waterfall!" "It's the Parched Paradise, Priscilla," I corrected, with a perfectly straight face. "And, as you can see, it's perfectly compliant with the HOA bylaws. Remember that clause about water features? Well, here it is. And, I might add, it's all powered by recycled rainwater. Very eco-friendly, you see." But it's a waterfall," she repeated, as if I hadn't heard her the first time. It's huge. It's noisy. It's completely unnecessary." "It's soothing, Priscilla," I countered with a shrug. "The sound of the water is very relaxing, and it's attracting all sorts of wonderful wildlife, birds, butterflies, even a few frogs. It's a veritable ecosystem right here in my backyard." I then proceeded to give her a tour, highlighting the waterfall's various features. I pointed out the multiple levels and tiers, the natural-looking rocks and boulders, the lush aquatic plants growing in the pond below. I even demonstrated the pump system, explaining how it circulated the carefully collected rainwater, creating a continuous cascading flow. Priscilla's reaction was predictable. She sputtered. She stammered. She shook her fist, she threatened. But mostly, she just looked utterly defeated. The sheer scale of the waterfall, the blatant, yet technically legal defiance of my actions, had broken her. This will not stand," she finally managed to choke out, her voice hoarse. I'll have this thing removed. You'll see." She turned and stomped off, her sensible shoes leaving, ironically, damp footprints on my now Waterfall-adjacent lawn, her aura of control completely washed away. The emergency HOA meeting, Part 2, the Waterfall washout, was, if possible, even more chaotic than the previous ones. Priscilla, looking like she'd subsisted solely on outrage and tap water for the past few weeks, presented her case with the fervor of a deranged hydrologist. The HOA, of course, created new rules to prevent it. This parched paradise, she declared, her voice shaking with emotion, is an affront to everything Dry Creek Estate stands for. It's a safety hazard. It's an eyesore. It's wasting water. This last accusation was particularly ironic, considering her own lawn watering habits. She'd even brought in a so-called hydrologist, a guy who looked suspiciously like her son-in-law, wearing a lab coat that was clearly too big for him, who testified about the dangers of uncontrolled water features and the potential for flooding and property damage. Then it was my turn. "Miss Parched," I began, addressing the board with a calm, reasonable demeanor that was, of course, completely fake, "seems to be under the impression that I've somehow violated the HOA bylaws. I assure you, I have not." I presented my defense meticulously and methodically. I cited the previous bylaws, the ones in effect when I'd started my project, highlighting the fact that there were no restrictions on water features. I argued that my waterfall was a legitimate landscaping element, that it enhanced the natural beauty of my property, and that it was, in fact, a rather impressive example of water conservation, since it used recycled rainwater. I even brought in a real landscape architect, a friend of Alex's, the contractor who'd built the waterfall, to testify about the project's design, its eco-friendly features, and its surprisingly positive impact on the overall aesthetic of my backyard. The other board members were, to put it mildly, divided. Some were clearly still loyal to Priscilla, but their support was rapidly evaporating. Others looked confused, overwhelmed by the sheer absurdity of the situation. And a few, I suspected, were secretly wanting to install waterfalls in their own backyards. Then, a woman from the back of the room stood up. She was a therapist, a resident of Dry Creek Estates I'd spoken to briefly during the construction. "I have to disagree with Miss Parched," she said, her voice clear and strong. "I think Mr. Miller's waterfall is therapeutic. The sound of flowing water is known to reduce stress, promote relaxation, and improve overall well-being. In fact," she added with a smile, "I'd prescribe a daily dose of waterfall therapy for everyone in this community, especially Miss Parched." That was the final blow. The board, facing a potential lawsuit, a public relations nightmare, and the undeniable evidence of my waterfall's alleged therapeutic benefits, voted to do nothing. The meeting ended in chaos, with Priscilla screaming about the downfall of civilization and the rise of the aquatic anarchists, and me, David Miller, the waterfall warrior, walking out with a smug, but well-deserved, I thought, smile on my face. But Priscilla, like a particularly persistent and drought-resistant weed, wasn't about to give up. What followed was a period of escalating absurdity that I can only describe as the Waterfall War. Priscilla, obsessed with getting rid of my parched paradise, or at the very least making my life miserable, tried every tactic she could think of. She filed complaints with the city, claiming it was a zoning violation, a safety hazard, and a public nuisance. The city inspectors came, they inspected, and they found nothing. My waterfall was perfectly legal. She tried to organize a neighborhood petition to have it removed. She went door to door, armed with her clipboard and her "think of the property values" speech, trying to convince people that my waterfall was a threat to their peaceful, water feature-free existence. The petition failed miserably. Most people either politely declined to sign or slammed the door in her face. Some even offered to help me maintain the waterfall, in exchange for a few minutes of waterfall therapy. She even, I suspect, attempted some minor acts of sabotage. I found a few, easily removed, "Keep Dry Creek Dry" signs stuck in the ground near the pond. And one morning I woke up to find the waterfall mysteriously turned off. Apparently she was hoping to, I don't know, dry it out? Her logic was, as always, questionable. Of course, I had security cameras everywhere, capturing her every move, and I, of course, responded in kind. Not with vandalism, oh no, I was above that. I responded with enhancements. I added underwater lighting to the waterfall, creating a dramatic nighttime effect. The cascading water shimmered and glowed in a rotating rainbow of colors, transforming my backyard into a magical, watery wonderland. I installed a mist feature, creating a cool, refreshing spray that enveloped the surrounding area. It was perfect for those hot summer days, and it added a touch of tropical ambience to my, otherwise suburban, backyard. I created a small ecosystem in the pond, adding fish, aquatic plants, and even a few harmless frogs. It was a thriving, self-sustaining microcosm of nature, right there in my backyard. And because why not, I hosted a Waterfall Wonderland party for the neighbors and the local news. I put up decorations, tropical flowers, tiki torches, and even a few inflatable flamingos, just for old time's sake, served refreshments, including waterfall teenies, blue cocktails with little umbrellas, and played music, a mix of Hawaiian tunes and the soothing sounds of waterfalls. I even started offering photos in front of it for a small fee. It was a glorious, ridiculous, utterly over-the-top spectacle. And with each passing day, with each new addition, with each new act of defiance, I could feel Priscilla's frustration growing, her power waning, her sanity slipping. The waterfall had become more than just a water feature. It was a symbol of resistance, a testament to the power of creative and slightly unhinged rebellion. And I, David Miller, the accidental aquascaper, was winning.